I'm live. Sorry, guys. I'm having a little trouble on this tech end. So wow, that was interesting. I apologize for that. Having a little tech issue, so I wasn't streaming live on all of those, and I didn't realize it was live on the other one. So today is going to be a little bit different. Miss Cathy is not feeling well, and so I decided to move forward because this is a topic that I happen to know. But welcome to Sipping Tea with Sabrina. We're going to be in just a second. We're sharing the tea on assessing your nonprofit board. But if you've never met me before, I'm Sabrina. I'm the founder of Supporting World Hope, a nonprofit coaching and consulting company. I started after 25 years in the industry, and I help nonprofits and small businesses build relationships that increase revenue. And I'm a keynote speaker and a master trainer. And the services I provide are broad, our board and fund development and strategic planning. And we have today, we're going to be talking about assessing your board. Again, my guest, Cathy, Cathy Allen from the board doctor, is not feeling well, but I do encourage you to go and Google her and search her. And show her some love, actually. But we're going to be talking about this conversation because it is critical, especially if you are a small nonprofit and you want tips and tricks to get the best out of your board of directors. But I want to make sure that you can hear me and you can see me. So if you can, in the comments, let me know. Only because I'm already having some tech issues. I see Martha. Martha, thank you for being here and letting me know that you're here. Hopefully everything is running well on the other platforms that this is streaming live to. So again, we're going to be talking about how to assess your board. So one of the questions that we're going to be talking about is how to define a strong and effective nonprofit board and why it's important for a small nonprofit to have one. And so when you're talking about defining a strong and effective board, it really is critical. And a strong board is the board meeting? Right? Do you have a consistent meeting schedule, whether that is monthly, whether that is quarterly? I believe in monthly board meetings, especially if you're trying to get things done. When you meet, do you have attendance, right? And so our board members attending at least 75% of the meetings as an individual board member, or are they not attending the meeting? Strong and effective nonprofit board for me is you have board giving. And so when we're talking about board giving, I'm not just talking about the giving of time. I'm talking about the giving of time. I'm talking about the giving of talent and treasure. And so those are some of the basic things for defining a strong and effective nonprofit board. Are they showing up for meetings? Do you have a standing meeting? Are your meetings strategic? You have a written agenda for your meetings? And are your board members contributing their time, their talent, and their treasure? Now, what are some of the key factors that small nonprofits should consider when assessing the composition of their board in terms of skills, diversity, and experience? This is one of the favorite things that I like to talk about because there are a lot of people who go into looking at the composition of their board without being strategic in their thoughts. And so what do I mean by that? You need to identify a board of directors that is going to help you get to your goals, right? And so what are your goals? That is the question. And I see too many people put their friends and their family on the board. and not think about what are my goals. So, for example, if you're going to do a capital campaign, then look at your board and assess your board. Do I have someone that is an architect on my board? Do I have someone that maybe has a construction background on my board? And if you don't, then that might be the time that you say, that might be the time that you say, I need to recruit towards that. And let's say if you don't have a project like that in mind, you still need to assess your board and you need to look and see what gaps you have. So when I talk about gaps, do you have a male heavy board? Do you have a female heavy board? Do you have a board that is full of, let's say if you're looking at personality type, consensus builders, right? And so if you have a board that's full of consensus builder, it may take longer to get decisions made because they want to make sure that everybody has input and they, everybody has the information. Do you have a board? Do you have anybody that's a strategic thinker or visionary on your board? These are all the things that you're looking for when we talk about diversity. We're also talking about diversity of industry, right? You have all bankers on your board. Do you have all bankers or all financial advisors or all of anything is too much, right? And so you need to make sure that your board is well represented with people who can help you towards whatever your goal is. And most of us, our goal is to increase our fundraising so that we can provide more service to our clients, right? And so in doing that, I say you cannot exercise that Bubba theory. And that Bubba theory is when you bring your mother, brother, cousin on the board because they know the same people that you know. And with your board, you're trying to make sure you increase the circle of influence for your nonprofit organization. And so you need to bring in people that have different circles of influences. So, for example, if you you need someone maybe from the legal field because then they have contacts in the legal field. You need someone from the medical field because they have contacts in the medical industry. You need someone from the marketing field because they have different contacts. So you get it. And so when you're sitting down and you're really looking at your board, make sure you're considering all of those things, their skill set, their diversity, their experience, how they think. Can it help me get to where I need to go? And so once you do that, that's going to help you define where the gaps are on your board and who you need to identify to recruit, right? To place on your board. And that's a very strategic way to think about board composition. And so also, once you have people on your board, right, you got to make sure that you orientate them. It's not just because they're great professionals I always go with banking. I don't know why. Bankers are one of my favorite board members anyway. So it's not just that they're always, if they're in the banking industry, that they know, if they're the president of a bank, doesn't mean they know how to run a nonprofit organization. I need to be clear with you on that. They still too need professional development and training to be an effective board member. And it starts with an orientation to your organization. And so once you orientate them, and what does the orientation look like? It is educating them on, here's our mission. Here's our vision. Here's our annual operating budget. Here are the last 3 sets of board minutes so they can get abreast of how the board meeting went and some of the last actions. It's a series of those things during their orientation. And then once they're orientated and they're on the board, you still have to provide some form of board education. And a part of that could be also evaluating their performance and effectiveness on your board. People want to know how they're doing. At least I want to know. A highly effective board member wants to know how they're doing. And so You can use, I love a tool. It's a self-evaluation tool that I give board members, because sometimes you don't have board members that are doing what they need to do. And look, I was from a board, and the board culture that I built, we were very transparent and we were very open. And so we had a grid, and everybody looked at it on a quarterly basis, and it was shared in a whole board packet and all of that. And if you were not doing so well, as a point system, you were in the red. And then if you were doing, all right, masa minus, as they say in my neighborhood, you were in the yellow. If you were on track, you were in the green. And so it was full disclosure. Everybody saw it. It had names. It had everything. Some organizations don't have that culture of transparency or accountability on their board. And so there's tools that you can use that you can pass around. And I believe I have a self-evaluation tool in my VIP resource library. Plug for that. If you go to my website, www.supportingworldhope.com, and join my VIP resource library, you'll have access to it. But it's a self-evaluation tool that you can pass to each board member, and it asks them questions, right? How much have you given? How much time? It forces them to self-evaluate, and they'll realize, ooh, man, I need to step up my game, or I don't. But here's the one thing that I would say too: you give that tool to them to self-evaluate, but the board chair, and I say the board chair because the board chair is the gatekeeper for the board, should encourage them to have a conversation, with them after their self-evaluation. Because what I also realize is some of the best board members, the ones that you think is knocking it out of the park, they do the self-evaluation. And what happens is then they're critical of themselves. Some of the best people are they're critical of themselves. And so you're trying to get the mediocrity to understand that they're being mediocre, and your high performer does a self-evaluation and start to feel bad. So you want to make sure you have your board chair have some conversations after the self-evaluation tool, and it's a great time for them to build a relationship. Maybe say, I'd like to reach out next week and have lunch with each of you. That's another strategy that you need to have when we're dealing with a small nonprofit board. You need to create a culture of team, right? It is not just show up to these monthly meetings, and this is the only time that we see each other, or quarterly meetings. Again, don't like quarterly meetings, or bi-monthly meetings, but show up at these monthly meetings, and there's no other connection. So this is a great time to make and start building that culture of connection. Have them do their self-evaluation, and I'll be reaching out. It could be either via phone to talk to you about your results and see what you thought and get feedback, right? So if I was a board chair, that's exactly what I would do. So because some of the common challenges that small nonprofits face when it comes to board assessment is that, you don't want a high performing board member to walk away from that assessment feeling bad, right? And so again, those that are generally high performing or type A personalities, they take this self-assessment and they start internalizing. So you need to have a process of following up. Make sure the board chair, hands out the evaluations. They do the evaluations, and then let them know, and then he can let them know, or she can let them know that we'll be calling you. I'll call you so we can talk about it, right? And move on from there. So don't dwell on that. And I always say self-evaluations are good. They are very good for people so that they can make sure when you're self-evaluating, when they're doing the evaluation, you're making sure that they know what the standard is. Because let's say there was some confusion about what was expected of them, right? So now, if they're evaluating, you have your standard there, and they're going to evaluate themselves against that standard. So no more confusion about, well, what is expected of me. And I would say with the self-evaluation, maybe do it twice a year. One at the beginning of the year, and the year is defined by you. That could be the calendar year or your fiscal year, and everybody has a different fiscal year, and so it's defined by you. I like to do those kinds of things though based on the calendar year, and that's just easier for me to keep track of. And so that's what I would say, that how to get over that challenge. And it's another way to make sure that your board governance, has a role in this process. And it's going to make sure, that you are improving your governance practices. So again, you're making them aware of what the standards are. And not only are you making them aware and establishing those standards and what they are, you're giving them an opportunity for growth to then have a conversation about where you would like them to be, or let's talk about what you experienced through this assessment. And this is going to help with the long-term success and sustainability of the organization, because as the board understands their roles and their responsibilities, and if a position comes open on the board, they know who they can nominate for a position, because they know that though they need to nominate people who can hit those standards, right? Sometimes we have a willy-nilly process of nomination, and it's not strategic. It's not thinking about standards. It's not thinking about anything. Again, it's going back to the Bubba theory. Do I know them? This is the good old boy, good old gal system. And so we're trying to move away from that, because that is toxic for small nonprofits. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't look at your circle board member or CEO and say, well, who do I know? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is who do I know, plus what gap are they filling? Do they have a skill set, a set of experiences, a set of credentials that will benefit my organization? I had the weirdest conversation with a nonprofit founder, and I'm going to tell you this. I was talking to them about their board, and I was talking to them about they're frustrated. I'm like, well, who's on your board? And they proceed to tell me that the mama is on their board, and they proceed to tell me that their childhood friend is on their board. And I go into what I say. And exactly what I'm telling you. And I'm like, you need to change who your board is, and you need to get professionals. You need the whole thing I'm telling you. And they turned to me with a straight face and they said, well, I won't be able to control them. So you need to ask yourself, are you not recruiting people that you cannot control because it's a fear of losing control? Now, I'm saying you need to be strategic at who you recruit. Of course, you don't want to bring somebody on your board who's going to have that takeover spirit if you're a founder or even a CEO sitting in that seat. But that's where the interview process comes in. That's where the nomination process comes in, to weed out those people. And so you got to get out of your own way. Just remember that story and understand where you're trying to go. If you're trying to help more unhoused people, if you're trying to help more youth, if you're trying to feed the hungry, you need good people around you that understand that. You're trying to create a winning team, and your board is a winning team. And once you bring them on, you have to make sure that they're educated. You have to make sure that you create a culture of accountability and engagement amongst your board. And a lot of times you're not creating that culture of accountability. And again, evaluate self-evaluations, or evaluating out loud like we did. It is going through and creating that culture of accountability. Whatever tools you put in place, whatever best practices that you've seen out there that you like, you have to hold board members accountable and have that culture of accountability, whether that's creating a competitive environment. I serve on a board, and their culture of accountability is really cool because they've created a competitive environment amongst the board members. So this is a different, it's a larger board. It's about 24 board members. And so when we do like fundraising for our annual campaign, or even for our gala, we're divided up into teams, and the team is given a goal. And they're very good about we name our teams. We send emails back and forth, ribbing each other, and they're very intentional about creating that competitive nature and that culture of accountability, right? For my organization, our culture of accountability was created, again, we were fully transparent with each other. We put attendance records every month in the board packet. Their name, no, it was the date of the meeting, their names across the top. Were they A? Were they P? What absent, present? We were accountable. And if somebody missed, 2 consecutive meetings, our board chair was calling them and making sure they understood, according to the bylaws, the 3 consecutive meetings, we can vote you out. I'm just checking in to make sure that everything is okay. I'm checking in to see if this is still a good fit for you. Maybe you got a promotion at work, whatever it is, but can you know about it? So it's that culture of accountability. And then is being very intentional about creating a culture of engagement. Are you designing things where your board members can get to know each other? Here's a very simple one, and a very actionable one that you can do. Are you celebrating your board members' birthdays? If you're having a monthly meeting, 9 times out of 10, somebody's birthday. Do you bring in a cake? And for my people that say, we don't have a budget for a cake, let me share with you. I had a board member, our board meetings were in the evening. And so every month, a different board member would sign up to be the potluck person. And if that's before we have budget for food, okay? So don't judge. They would sign up, be the potluck person. And so they would bring in the food for that meeting. And if it was somebody's birthday, they would bring in the cake for that meeting. And we did this for a couple of years until we got a budget and we put the money in the budget that the organization could take care of that. But how are you creating engagement amongst your board? How are you developing that winning team and creating that culture of accountability and engagement? Because if you have a goal, and let's say your mission is your goal, you have to create that so that everybody can be heading towards that mission. It's like creating a winning NBA team or a winning NFL team. Pick a sport. But everybody is moving towards that goal, and you have to create that culture of engagement to move people towards that goal. And so how are you doing that? Maybe it's you're having a big celebration at the end of the year. How are you celebrating? How are you creating that culture of engagement? December, Christmas time. Let's have a Christmas party, right? Where all the board members get together. We celebrate what we did that year. But you have to create that culture of accountability. You have to be intentional about creating that culture of engagement. And so I hope that, you're getting something out of this. I'm seeing in the comments, I'm pretty happy about that. The other thing is there are red flags that you see that signal that your board may need some assessment or some potential changes in board composition, especially at a small nonprofit. So, are board members not showing up to board meetings? That is a clear red flag. It could be a red flag on anything. It could be a red flag on, I will stop showing up if I don't feel as I'm talking as an individual. If I feel like my time is being wasted, I won't show up. If we keep talking about the same thing that we kept talking about, I won't, I'm going to elect to bow out. I need strategy. I need to know that my time is counting. That's from my personal point of view. But they could be bowing out too because they don't take the organization serious. But these are all red flags that need to be talked about. And that's why you're doing these assessments, right? So what could be other red flags? Well, it's people texting during the board meeting. They're not really paying attention to the board, to the meeting. They're distracted. That's a red flag. They're not fully engaged. You have not created that culture of accountability and engagement. Another red flag could be, is everybody, now I've done this, so I'm giving myself an example. One day I looked up from a board of about 21 and about 19, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but about 19 of them were bankers. I told y'all I had a thing with bankers. I love myself a good banker because they got some connections, and federal, there's a law written that they have to support the community and nonprofits. So yeah, I went there. So I looked around and I had like 19 bankers. So that's a red flag. You need to have diversity of thought and experiences and industries. So these are some of the red flags that says, ooh, maybe I need to change my board composition. Here's another one. This is self-revealing time for me. There's a mistake that I made. We were in the middle of a capital campaign, and we applied to the Kresge Foundation. With typical grant application, they ask for a copy of your board roster. Sent it in, didn't think about it, no problem. They come back and they say, yeah, you don't have a lot of men on your board. Oh, yeah, I don't. I didn't realize, because we were intentional about who we recruited, but we forgot to look at gender. We all do the same thing. We tend to surround ourselves with the people that we know and the people that we interact with. I happen to be a female here, and I like working with other powerful females. And I looked up, and all my board members were pretty much female. And it took Kresge Foundation to say, you need to look at this. You might want to expand your board. You need to assess the makeup of your board. And sometimes we do it and we don't realize it. So red flags: board members not attending meetings, board members not engaged in the meetings. Do all your board members look alike? That is a red flag. Are they all from the same industry? That is a red flag. And so look at those things and make sure, again, that when you're doing these assessments, it's for the benefit of the organization. It's not just you're doing the assessment and then there's no follow-up conversation. There's no follow-up plan to I don't want to say fix, but to fix what is discovered during the assessment, because you want to ensure that there's transparency and there's trust, that's being built, all of those things. And so board assessment is really critical in this whole process. And it's a necessary thing if you want to make sure that you are retaining and not only retaining, but you are also attracting high caliber people to your board. It's okay to hold people accountable. I did a survey of CEOs and of nonprofits, and I asked them, what was one of their biggest fears? Number one, biggest fear in working with their board of directors. Number one was, I don't want to seem bossy. And then number two is, I don't want to ruin relationships. It's okay to be bossy, because if you are a CEO of a nonprofit, you are the boss of that particular organization. Now, you are working in partnership with the board, because let's keep it real, the board can hire, they hire and fire you. I know sometimes with founders that blows their mind, that they can start an organization, make it and build it to success, and then the board can fire them. It can happen. I've seen it happen. But the goal is for you to be a strong CEO. And as a strong CEO, you need to understand and take ownership that you are the nonprofit expert. You're handling the day-to-day. You know what's going on in this organization. And you have to build that trust with your board and that culture of accountability. Does it happen overnight? No, it does not happen overnight. But can it happen? Yes, it can happen. And so moving forward, I would say, based on that survey result, is you have to own that you are the boss, right? And you have to own that you need to build relationships, but you can't have fear of ruining those relationships. And so what I know, I have serving on many, many boards, is if you, in order to start creating that culture of accountability and engagement, is really, it starts with you. And how are you carrying yourself? Are you coming into the boardroom with a sense of in a sense of servitude, or are you showing up and saying, I am the CEO of this organization, and here is how this is happening, and you're directing your board from behind? So it's okay to accept the fact that you're the boss, and it's okay to you're not going to ruin relationships. People respect when you have your things in order. Okay. And so those are some strategic things that you can do that make sure that that's happening. Have your agenda, bring yourself, have an agenda, send the agenda out. Let me start at the basics. Have a standing meeting date. So if your meeting time is going to be the first Tuesday of every month at 12 noon, then that's your meeting time. Set it up for the year. Send it out so your board members know what it is. Have a board packet that goes out to them at least 72 hours in advance. That's 3 days in advance, right? So they have time to look at the material. They know it's coming. Once the meeting happens, it's a board meeting. It's not where the CEO gets up and goes through the whole agenda and does all the talking. No, it's a board meeting. Your board is speaking at the meeting. How do you make that happen? Let's step back. You got the meeting date. Insert in there where you and the board chair, or you and the executive committee, whoever it is, meets before the agenda goes out and determine what is on the agenda. Now, for me, that was me and my executive committee, because I needed to get my executive committee engaged more. And so we would meet, I would have a draft agenda. Here's the agenda. We would discuss the agenda. They put things that they wanted to have added in there. And that was our agenda for the meeting, but we crafted it together. Then that agenda went out, the agenda and the packet, all the supporting documents went out 72 hours in advance of the board meeting. And then once the board meeting happened, we followed the agenda, and the agenda was pretty clear. It said what we're going to talk about, who was going to talk about it, right? And so the who that was going to talk about it was a board member, not me as the CEO. My goal in the board meeting was for me to rarely speak. I was there for support. And you have to get to that where you're not the CEO directing the board meeting. You want your board members to feel ownership of it. That creates that atmosphere of accountability. And so these are the little things that I wanted to share with you today. And again, I'm going to do some shout outs before we proceed to the closing, because I see a lot of people showed up here. And I love when people show up and they're engaged in the comments. So I see Marsha's here. Shout out Marsha Terry. Yay. I see Renee is here. And so I have some other people that are here, but I can't see their names, but the comments are coming in. And so what I want to do at this time is to see and ask, are there any questions? Because if you have a question, you can put it in the comments and I can answer them if you have any questions. But if you don't have any questions as you're getting your thoughts together, one of the things that I always get is, how do I get my board to fundraise? That is a question that I always get, right? And so if you're looking to get that question answered, I encourage you to visit my website. Hey, Jamar, I encourage you to visit my website and set up a consultation with me. And that is something that we will talk about, how to get your board members to fundraise. But if you follow this conversation, all the little nuggets are in this conversation. All the things that we're talking about will help you to move your board members towards a fundraising, especially if you adopt the strategic agenda, right? I'll do a quick and dirty on the agenda because we got about 5 more minutes. Here you go. So start your agenda off with a mission moment. So what is a mission moment? A mission moment is if you are lucky enough to have a client that can come into your board meeting and introduce themselves, that's an awesome mission moment, right? So I used to work with youth, cute youth. I bring them into the boardroom. They would say, this is my name. This is what school I go to. And then the board members would ask them questions. Took about 5 minutes. Why do you do that? Because you're creating ambassadors. Your board members will remember the stories. And when they go out to the chamber meeting or the Rotary meeting or whatever meeting they're in, they're going to talk about that little kid that they met. They're going to forget the statistics, but they will remember stories. So if you are not lucky enough to work with cute kids, it's okay. If your mission is battered spouses or any of those, any of those tough missions, make sure you're still telling the story, but you can tell the story from a different perspective. You might not want to bring your client in, and some people don't want to bring their clients in, and that's okay. Well, then you tell the story from a different perspective. You tell the story of the packed bag that's in the closet. It's a video. And this day and age, you can create so many different series of videos that you can present. And so it's really planning stories for your board members so that they can become good ambassadors, right? And not only ambassadors for your organization, but they'll become good advocates because they'll be sharing your story. So first 5 minutes of the agenda, mission moment. Second 5 minutes of the agenda is consent agenda. Now, how does consent agenda work? Because this is one of my pet peeves, because I've been sitting in board meetings and people be doing it wrong. So consent agenda is one emotion. and you have your items under there. And the items that you put under consent agenda is stuff that happened in the past. We don't need to discuss this. You know, minute approvals. You don't need to discuss that. It could be your CEO report, if you force your CEO to do a report. Any staff reports, any committee reports. If you're financially strong, sometimes your financials can go up on a consent agenda. But it's one motion. I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Done. That's the motion. Someone seconds it, you move on. You do not go, I make the motion to approve the consent agenda, and included on the consent agenda is item A, minutes from da-da-da-da, item B, da-da-da-da. You're defeating the purpose. Make sure you use that exact same that I said on consent agenda. 5 minutes of your agenda. Boom. Actually less than 5 minutes, but you get the point. Then you're going to move on to board education. And I know it's always a goal every month to follow this model. Don't abandon it because it doesn't work for you the first couple of 50 times. 20 minutes of board education, okay? So that board education could be, we're going to call 5 donors and say thank you. Everybody pull out your phone. Here's the list. I printed the list. You get 5 donors, you get 5 donors, you get 5 donors. Here's the script. If you don't know what to say, let's call and say thank you. Bring them back together. Some people are going to say, wow, that was refreshing, because they say no one ever called them. And some people are going to say, well, I left voicemail, and it's okay, but it's board education and you're getting them comfortable with fundraising and all of those things. So 20 minutes of board education. Then you're going to do about 45 minutes focus on the strategic direction and your strategic plan for the organization. That's where the meat of your board meeting should be. And if you don't have a strategic plan, it's okay. It's one of the services that I provide, but it is okay if you don't have a strategic plan. Most of you know your goals. There may not be written down in a plan, but you have your goals. And so you want to spend most of your time talking about how you're going to reach those goals. And then you end the meeting with a generative question. And generative question sounds complicated, but it's not. It's like, what was the last organization that you gave to, and why did you give to that organization? That's the question that you ask your board. And it'll start a conversation. Well, I gave it such and such and such. Oh, well, why? Well, they asked. Oh, well, maybe we should be asking too. Oh, I gave to such and such and such because I saw a commercial and it really touched my heart. Oh, so you give based on emotion. Well, we need to create a compelling story so that people can give. And so that's how you can run your board meetings. That's one of the major questions that I get. And so I just want to make sure none of this is easy. None of this is easy. But keep moving forward. And I have a question here. As a new director of development, what is the first time to handle a board member? Let me make sure I got this question right. I think as a new director of development, what is the first time to handle board members? So I'm assuming that I am not assuming you are a director of development. You are working with board members and you need to know maybe how to handle those board members. Director of developments, y'all sit in a strange seat. Make sure that when you're working with your board of directors that you have the full blessings of your CEO. And this is what I would do as a new development director. I would set up a listening tour. I would go and meet with each board member, and I would ask them what their goals were as far as the organization. Here's what our year looks like as far as fundraisers and all of these things. How do you think you can, what do you want to see the changes? What do you like, what you don't like? And I would do that with each board member, and I compile a report and I share that with my CEO, and I develop a plan on how we're going to move forward. And so I have another question here, and this is going to be the last one that we take, is can you elaborate on what you should be talking about in the strategic direction part of the meeting? Progress towards these goals. Are there action items in here? Okay, so your strategic plan, and if you don't have a strategic plan, you have strategic goals. Let me say that. And it is taking whatever those 3 goals are that you have, and those are your agenda topics, right? And so let's take one that's easy. Ensuring necessary resources. Pretty much everybody has that as a goal. Ensuring necessary resources. So under that ensuring necessary resources, depending on what month it is, right? It could be where you're planning let's say if you're planning your gala, then that's what you're talking about under that topic, right? And so it's where we at in the gala planning. Each board member is going to be responsible to secure 2 table sponsors, 2 live auction items. Let's talk about that, where we're at, where are some of those big pieces. Have we, has the venue been secured? What is our budget? It's all of those conversations under there. I happen to serve on Village in the Valley with Marsha. Big up to Village in the Valley. Shout out to Village in the Valley. One of our goals is to increase our membership. So that should be talked about during the board member. What are the strategies to increase the membership? What's been membership growth? What are we doing this month? We do these things called First Fridays that happen every first Friday that helps towards membership. How are they going? What can we do to enhance that? So it's having those strategic conversations around your goals. And when you have a written strategic plan, when you have a written strategic plan, as a part of the monitoring of that strategic plan, you have specific action items that go along. So you should be talking about those things. Now, does this happen overnight? No, it does not happen overnight. These are some best practices. Sometimes you're going to get discouraged in the process, but you remember what the best practice is and you go back and you revisit it. Especially if you are on a startup board, it is hard to get these habits, healthy habits going. And it's easy to regress. It's easy to send the board agenda at the last minute. It's easy to remove board education because our meetings are lasting too long. It's easy to fail to talk about the strategic plan, but you have to have some intentionality. You have to have someone that's kind of holding the group accountable and going back to, okay, let's start back again. Let's get back on the train track. Let's do this. Let's make sure that we're doing this. And after a while, the whole goal is it becomes how the board runs. And so that's what the goal that you're trying to do and get to. So that is my time. I want to thank everyone for showing up and engaging in the questions. If you want to reach out to me and continue this dialogue, my website again is www.supportingworldhope.com. And you can also email me at Sabrina@supportingworldhope.com. I do answer questions when you email them to me. So it is great. No problem there. And I leave you with this. Your mission matters and deserves to be highlighted in your community. Your mission matters and can be an inspiration to those who need it the most. Your mission matters and deserves to be funded to its fullest capacity. And I'll see you at the next Sipping Tea with Sabrina on August the 30th. And the guest and topic is going to be around creating a healthy nonprofit board with Crystal Cherry. And that's Sipping Tea with Sabrina. And I will see you the next time. Bye-bye, guys.